Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us once again. So now we're going to move on into the conversation with soil. And for this topic, I've kind of broken it down into 5 themes that kind of correspond with the images that you see here, which are products that have been generated by the fellows and also some of the documentation that you see as well in some of the essays that the 2 authors have written. This includes Marilyn Poitras and also Aleesandro Longhi. And we really appreciate their input and their, I think, really positive and dynamic essays that they included in the book. I think it, rounds the whole portion of soil very well. And with that, yeah, thank you again for joining us. So the first topic that I wanted to talk about is soil as a living interdependent ecosystem. So soil is not inert dirt. It's a living dynamic matrix filled with organisms and microscopic networks that interact with roots, water, and minerals. It sustains biodiversity and is critical for ecological health, a delicate balance, a source of nutrients, a thriving microscopic interconnected ecosystem that which could be drastically altered by simple touch of the hand. The next topic that I want to talk about is the regenerative impact of soil and the human impact and soil degradation. So humans have dramatically altered soil through practices like grading, extraction, pollution, and displacement, leading to over 75% of soil being depleted globally. However, soil is a reactive substrate that constantly regenerates itself as much as it imposed upon by humanity. It blooms with resilient life to reestablish the invisible worlds and make the land fertile for all to thrive. But we must keep in mind that for this process to manifest itself, the soil requires patience, time, and understanding. So we also are a counterbalance to some degree in this process. And so this deals with the cultural and scientific perspectives on soil. Soil is viewed through both indigenous worldviews as sacred and regenerative, and scientific lenses as complex data-rich biome, offering a more holistic understanding of our place within natural systems. In the Valtaleggio, NAHR's Eco-Laboratory, artists entangle themselves in a relationship to understand the strata underpinning soil development and the traces of residual imprints left behind. Through this relationship and experience, we gain a better understanding of the notion that we are a significant factor that can offer a counterbalance in the regenerative processes that soil requires. We are essentially the key factor affecting the quality of soil. Soil as memory and environmental legacy, so imprinting how we actually start to associate ourselves with soil. Soil acts as a memory keeper, storing the imprints of environmental history from organic growth to population, and raises the question of what we're leaving behind for future generations. Understanding and listening to the soil lets us reconsider our role and our position within the environment and how we choose to interact with defenseless organisms found in the worlds beneath our feet. We have an opportunity to choose how we are imprinted and what knowledge we offer to future generations that will discover the next strata to come. And then lastly, I wanted to end this with data, so soil in design and regenerative futures. The collection of research and data offers us distinct glimpses at the levels of damage that are produced through the numerous ways humanity mines and subdivides the soil and lands across the globe. Additionally, very much like depths of the ocean, it offers us new glimpses and discoveries into a vast array of microorganisms that play critical roles in the ecological health of the soil, which can assist in healing other barren landscapes that seem impossible to replenish. As artists, scientists, designers, and planners, we have a responsibility to consider soil as a core component in regenerative practices, rethinking materials, sites, interventions to work in harmony with ecological systems. So with that being said, I think I want to now hand it over to our wonderful authors. Again, Marilyn Poitras, author of The Global Perspective, and Aleesandro Longhi, author of The Local Perspective. So I'll hand it off to Marilyn. So welcome, Marilyn.
And I will share for Marilyn the screen.
Okay.
Thank you, Ilaria.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I just want to say I'm so grateful to be here. Happy Earth Day, and to just say thank you on so many fronts for not just participating in the launch today, but participating in the whole project. I really want to strongly let our listeners know that this work is leaders making connections and inspiring, and just listening to the conversations through the process of preparation to write the book was hugely inspiring for me. I'm a lawyer, I'm Indigenous, I'm Métis in Canada, and my training is definitely institutional in law, but my cultural teachings are that law is held in nature. And so being asked to participate in this was a huge honor for me. So Nananaskaman, thank you so much. And we can go to the next slide. Human beings, us on Earth, want to connect. We understand that we are somehow connected. And today we see that we're connected not only to each other, but to all of our surroundings. And in my culture, we say all beings are our relatives, all beings are animate, even rocks. We're connected to the land upon which we live. We're connected to soil. Furthermore, because we are the smallest part of creation, dependent on all else humans are, we have this interdependentness that ultimately becomes our strands of connectivity to everything around us. We're connected to each other, we're connected to beings, we're connected to the earth herself. So that's a mindset that I took in to explore, to see how we touch the earth, our soil, our mother, to understand ourselves and our roles in the time of living on her and with her. So that's my mindset going in. We can go to the next slide. A typical way to see the earth and the soil beneath our feet is through the lens of perhaps what soil we live on geographically, our community, our country, our nation. Perhaps you might see them through your yard or your garden or your home. Another way you might look at this might be through culture or your employment, what you do for a living, or where you might travel to. This image here that you're seeing reminds us of our dominion over her, over our mother, over the earth. Dominion over what we plant, what we extract, how we harvest. It reminds us of soil holding and nourishing our food, and also our relationship to her in this dance between us and soil and life itself. My chapter gives examples of colonizing land and her riches for gain, for need, and for control. And I've got a few quotes that I want to read to you from the chapter. The typical way we discuss the dirt beneath our feet is by ownership. Ownership through continent, country, state, province, district, city, village, town, and then often by the person whose name is actually attached to it. Laws are then created to limit access to the land by other humans, and in case of animal husbandry, limits to the animals themselves. The view of land through ownership is actually very common, and the act of mapping alone could absorb libraries of information. This type of labeling, categorizing, is the way we measure, attribute, and expand power over the domain of soil. Occupation through flag and blood is the action within the pages of recorded human history used to measure the strength of a nation. Conquer the people, take the land, the more the better. Boundaries are the natural outcome of this act of ownership, control, and domination. Extraction of the riches of the day are the aim, and this is the act of colonization and commodification of the earth. This has become our relationship with soil. If you just close your eyes and see the landscape of your own homeland, you see highways and fences and roads. You imagine lines of latitude and longitude and invisible borders. You might see flags or power lines. There's so many ways to show we control, possess, and own the land. Next slide. There are many ways to follow the threads of who we are and how we live on and take from the soil. This image is really powerful for me. I want to just be grateful to the artist just to plant us in just a small image of a mother in the grass can be so powerful. The best way I know and the way I've been taught and the way I learn about how to learn who we are is through story. Story contextualizes and pulls in your rememberings as well as, and more importantly, your imagination. Story stretches us to spaces we might not go otherwise, and people are like moths to a flame with stories, especially when they're about yourself. The model I use in my chapter to connect us back to Earth is creation story. We can see our past through the human lived story interwoven into the soil, and we can predict our future from it. Mother Earth is a historian and also can tell the tales of the lives she supports and the cost of the loss of the connections to her needs. How might we pick that thread of connection and ultimately interdependency back up? How can we rewrite our story and read it in the soil in the future, which has been mentioned already? Myth or mystery, fable or legend, creation stories are essential to our relationship with soil because they remind us of our connection to the earth and all that exists within, upon, and outside of her. There are many ways to know her, to know ourselves, and to find our own understanding about how we come to live on her, to see how we live through her, and ultimately to know how we die with her. That's the cycle. It's the reality of all that exists here, and we can see ourselves within that if we can understand our relationship to Earth, the planet, and within the discussion, the ground itself. We can remember, reconnect, and repair with her, for her. Roles and responsibilities are often found within creation stories, and with them we find ourselves as villains, heroes, friends, and foes. For example, the North American Indigenous people, NAHR, Cree, you might know us as, tell creation story of Star Woman, Achacosac-Esqueo. Her travels through the sky from the stars to the land on the back of a turtle, leaving marks related to moon cycles. The story gives us details about the birds who caught her fall and the struggles of the animals near her who aided her by going to the depths of the water under the turtle to locate some earth to use to create a place for her to live. It's actually a love story of how so many animals perished to find the earth for her, and ultimately how the tiny able muskrat near death is the hero who returns with earth in his claws to give it to Achacosac-Esqueo. The Star Woman is then able to expand that earth to create a larger island for all beings to live upon. Everyone has a role with this NAHR story. Every bird and animal described in the full version are working to bring her soil so that Achacosac-Esqueo can live, eat, replenish, and contribute to their lives. Each creature has certain characteristics that reflect their gifts and therefore their condition to this place. The woman is a life giver and expands the earth for all. There is even a component for spider, Apicasis, who ultimately symbolizes our web of connectedness. Everything is connected, the sun to light, to moon, to stars, the flyers, the earth, the animal kingdom, plant kingdom, the crawlers, and the water spirit and swimmers. Whether it's through Romulus and Remus, Zeus, Huagan, Rod, Ometakulti, Pangu, or thousands of others, there are a multitude of creation stories to find within every culture. Some tell of the birth through the creation of children from one being, or the egg that produced the hero, or of humans created through pure will. Others crossbreed animals and gods and humans. All have a connection to land, plants, and animals. These connections are the key, and they vary from life-producing to life-taking. The stories tell of power and the dynamic relatedness of all beings within the story, upon the earth, from the heaven, or from the depths of the universe. Creation stories nourish your soul, connect you to your ancestral lands, and awaken your blood memory of who you are and why you are here. Last slide.
It's coming. Oops.
She teaches us through the complexity of the earth, the soil is again reflecting back teachings to us in what she offers or acquiesces for us to take. What did it take for her to grow it? What are the perfect conditions for her birthing? What strains it? Who are her cosmological and metaphysical helpers? Those helpers must ensure seeds are not only grown through the plants, but exposed and dropped back to earth through water, wind, birds, bugs, animal, and flame. She does not birth her children in rows or alone. She births in unison and with other beings around the seedling, the egg, the animal, that they in turn be fed or be fed to. She has her own science, intelligence. She can also be merciless in the execution of what she knows are her own cycles. Thank you again for including me in this. And I've been loving the stories and seeing the connection so clearly through the storytelling today. So I just want to say thanks for that.
Thank you, Marilyn, very much. We'll come back to more conversation, more discussions as we, after Aleesandro's talk, like we did in the previous format. But thank you for now for your introduction to your essay and to Earth as a she. Aleesandro, would you like to share your screen? Let us know, please, what you prefer.
Yep, sure. Give me a second. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, you're good.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for being here. So I am Aleesandro Longhi. I am a contract professor of geopedology and a postdoc researcher from the University of Insubria. And today I'd like to invite you to look at soil not just as the ground beneath our feet, but as a living dynamic archive, one that sustains life and remembers history. Soil is often underestimated, but it's central to our survival. It connects all Earth's systems and responds to our actions, for better or for worse. Our understanding of soil has evolved over the millennia. In ancient civilizations like Egypt, India, and China, soil was studied primarily for agricultural potential. People quickly learned which type of soil were more or less fertile or easier to work. Then came Greek philosophers like Aristotle, who framed soil within the theory of the four elements, and Theophrastus, who first distinguished soil as a physical entity different from Earth planet. The Romans then systematized this knowledge. Varro classified hundreds of soil types, and Columella pioneered field experiments to prevent soil degradation. The radical shift in study of soil came in the 19th century with the work of Dokuchaev. For the first time, soil was studied as an independent body with its own origin, properties, and evolution. This gave birth to the modern soil science. Scientifically speaking, soil is far more than just dirt at the surface. It is a three-dimensional natural body occupying the thin outermost layer of the Earth crust. Despite its thinness compared to the size of the Earth, it plays an enormous role in sustaining life. Soil is a dynamic system, constantly exchanging matter and energy with the surrounding spheres, like the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, and the lithosphere. Each of the systems interact with the soil. The atmosphere provides gases, moisture, and regulate the temperature of the soil. The hydrosphere brings water that dissolves mineral and transports nutrients within the soil. The biosphere supplies organic matter and microbial life in the soil. And the lithosphere offers minerals and the physical base from which the soil develops. Thus, soil is not an isolated entity. It is a deeply interconnected with the planetary system. It is a living interface, a place where geology meets biology and where chemical, physical, and biological processes overlap. To understand soil formation, we can imagine a vertical journey below our feet. We start with the parent material, the unaltered rock that gives birth to the soil. Through the slow action of weathering, both physical and chemical, this rock becomes saprolite, a weakened fractured layer. Above that, we can find the regolith, a zone made of partially disintegrated rock and soil material. Finally, we reach the soil, a living system organized in layers called horizon, each with its own composition and characteristics. Incredibly, a healthy soil is teeming with life. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, worms, all working to recycle nutrients, to support plants, and to maintain soil structure. Without this layer and without this life, plants could not grow, animals could not feed, and humans could not survive. Now, if we zoom out, we can place the soil within a larger concept, the concept of critical zone. The critical zone is the thin shell of the earth that extends from the top of the tallest tree down to the bottom of the groundwater table. It is where air, water, soil, rock, and living organisms interact and create the conditions necessary for life. Oops, sorry. This zone regulates freshwater supplies, climate patterns, and nutrient cycling. It is also a buffer against natural hazards like floods and droughts. However, the critical zone is extremely vulnerable. Soil formation is an extremely slow process. It can take 100 to 1,000 years to build just a few centimeters of fertile soil. Meanwhile, human activities are destroying or degrading soil much faster than it can regenerate. If current trends continue, it is estimated that in just 40 years, only 20% of the needed arable land will still remain available. Preserving the critical zone and thus preserving soil is not an option. It is a necessity for future of all life on Earth. Today, soil is under serious threat from three main fronts. First, climate change. Rising temperatures, altered precipitation, and extreme weather events are affecting not only the vegetation above, but also the biodiversity within the soil. For example, in alpine region, we are seeing a lot of exotic species like evergreens and palm trees invading natural forest. This shift changed everything, from the type of plant that can grow to the fungi that live underground, to the nutrients available in the soil. These are complex and delicate ecosystems, and climate change is pushing them out of their natural balance. The second threat is the urbanization. Every year, in Europe, we permanently lose around 1,000 square kilometers of fertile land. That's like paving over a city the size of Berlin every single year. And it's not just about food production. Urban sprawl fragments natural habitats, disrupts local climate regulation, and increase flood risk by sealing the soil and breaking the natural water cycle. Finally, the third threat is intensive agriculture. Overexploitation depletes the organic matter in the soil, reduce biodiversity, and make the lands dependent on artificial fertilizer and irrigation. These practices also release carbon dioxide, degrade water quality, and cause erosion at a rate that far exceeds the soil formation. It's like mining the soil until it has nothing less to give. We have to remember, soil is a non-renewable source, at least on a human timescale. Losing soils means losing the foundation of terrestrial life. So the three takeaways that I want to give you with this presentation and that I gave in the chapter of the book I wrote are here represented. Soil is an independent natural body. It's not just a resource, it's a system, an archive, and a support for life. Soil is rapidly changing due to our action, and many of these changes often are irreversible. Looking at the past helps us face the future. Soil carries the memory of past climate events and human impacts. That memory can help guide our decision for the future. Thank you for your attention. Let's not forget that most life on Earth, including ours, depend on what happens below the ground. Soil is not just where things grow, it's where they begin. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts about what we have been talking about in this presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Aleesandro. Thank you, Aleesandro.
Thank you too.
No, thank you, Aleesandro. Thank you, Marilyn. These were, I think, really great, poignant conversations about soil in both spectrums, where we're talking about our whole embodied nature into soil and how we actually respect it in that way, but it also kind of creates our narratives and our history in that way. But we also have it as a data of archive as well, where we're actually starting to understand the deeper layers that go into it and really address the fact that we are basically making a big impact on it. And we really don't appreciate those facts and notice it until we basically see it on the surface, when it's already a little bit too late to react to it in that way. And like you're saying too, it basically it takes a long time for the soil to replenish, and it won't happen necessarily in our lifetime. So it's something we definitely have to care for and tend to as we're thinking about these things, and also working with the soil in a more regenerative way and a more positive way in general. So I appreciate both points of view. I think they're really both in parallel to one another, but they also cross and overlap into the conversations that I think are also reflected in some of the fellows' work as well. And so with that, I do want to bring a question up to the fellows in particular. So if some of the fellows are here, maybe they have a chance to respond to this a bit. But I want to understand a little bit more too, and how you see your impact on the soil, and how do you express that through your body of work, maybe the work that you've done at NAHR, or any of the work that has come out of this response to soil. And also some of these questions that have been posed here through the conversation from Marilyn and also Aleesandro.
Yes. I'm gonna name some of the fellows I see in the videos, Ho Kyung and Petra, two spectrum, right? One uses the body itself, Ho Kyung. I don't know if you like to, I can pull up the images from the book if you like to. You don't have to, but if you're happy to do it, we can share it. And then I see Petra and other people, we can, freely, we have 20 minutes, so.
First of all, like it was very intriguing to listen to the more of the scientific and research-based description of soil, because it really almost literally linked to the way I approached seeing soil as a skin of the earth. And the I think so when I went to NAHR, my research or the my motivation was like seeing soil as the skin of the earth. And I also have that concept. I use the concept of a skin ego by French psychologist Didier Angouet, where he discusses that tactile sensation is where our psychological bases are formed. And so the skin is a boundary, but it's also channels and pathways that divides, but also connects inside and outside. And often we don't even think of our soil, but that's almost the elements from the nature where we always have a direct encounters and connections, and we are literally touching it every day. But in urban environment, that's often like disconnected, and in a urban area, just seeing soil is actually very precious in some ways. And from and I've been living in almost entire my life in a very urbanized area. So when I went to NAHR and then in a way encountering that much of the vast nature, I was a little overwhelmed. And at first I didn't know how to connect my approach and connect my body and soil and nature. So I began with like directly connecting to the nature and like literally touching soil. But then I thought how I place myself in a way that's not using nature as just a background, and the way in ways that I can connect with directly so that I can have like emotional connection with it. So the first image on the right side is in a way just using it as a background. And at the time, the concept that I had was about tactile sensations, tactile sensations that actually like form spaces of the way I feel about myself. And the other one is in a way exploration and process that I was researching how I can place my body in a nature that's on a mutual way. So there's been a lot of conversation in the previous sessions where how we can view each like topics from non-anthropocentric ways. And when I make my performance, I try to see like, because it's very easy to use nature as just something that's a very like beautiful, diverse, but by intervening it, at first it was like my being and presence itself was almost breaking the harmony that already exists there. So there was one dimension I was keep like in a way struggling a lot, figuring out what that means when I have to exist, but also have all these questions in my mind. And so, yeah, I would say, to summarize, I would say I did not have the answers while I was in the residency, but it echoes back when I came back to very urbanized environment, and I guess all these questions that came up during the residency persist, and it in a way continues in my current and ongoing research, and yeah, creating works.
Yeah, thank you, Kyung. I think the bottom image is very powerful to what you are talking about, and this kind of the body also, right? Not just the mind, but the body that connects to the other. And in this case, is the earth, not just the surface, but soil as something that also maybe at a more, in a way, granular level even, or kind of at a different scale, by touching it with our body, we understanding the soil as an aggregate. I love the expression Aleesandro had, that is the meeting geology meets biology. That's kind of where the soil comes alive and becomes something to understand in many, many ways. And I think the work of Petra was kind of another aspect or another positioning, right, of looking at the granularity in a way, Petra, of the soil and using it. I don't know, do you want to say something to your
Yes.
work on the left page, right page, when we look
Yeah.
at it?
Thank you very much. I came to the landscape as a visual artist and printmaker, and with the soil, I was intrigued and fascinated by. I went through all kinds of different places, the woodlands, the meadows, the pastures, the mountains, and collected samples of soil and noted the vegetation and the rocks that were there as well. And I made pigment from these different soils. And I really sort of realized that color itself is an expression of everything that makes soil and earth. So it is the vegetation that breaks down and grows through it and breaks down rocks. It's the underlying rocks, whether they're chalky or granite or whatever, and the weather, the rain, if it's extreme up in mountains, even animals and their impact, the cows and different grasses that grow, links to everything, agriculture, and that link to people's relationships. So in a way, color and making the ink, which I used to make little paintings of a landscape, really reflected all these different layers and interactions in a really complicated way, but it came out as something beautiful that artists have used all the time, with color, ochre, and all these things. And it's a manifestation of all these different elements. And it's just I've been working, and I'm still slowly doing it, on something called an emotional soil map of Britain, where I ask people to send me a little teaspoon of soil from a place that means something really important to them, and writing, why it means that to them. Why does this place mean something, the significance of it? And it's an emotional sort of soil map of the country of Britain. I'm trying to sort of create it using their soil to make the pigments. I'm sorry, it's just a sort of idea that it's not really, it's too big to almost make happen properly, but there's something about emotion and place and soil I was trying to play with.
That's interesting. We hope to see it one day. And I think that's often, Marilyn, you speak to place in many ways, right? Maybe, I don't know if you use the term place when you speak to it, but many of the last sentence of Petra resonate with me to what you have been talking about in your essays, and the idea of Mother Earth also for indigenous communities, and how much we can learn from it. On the other side, when we started, we were talking about the foreword by Malena Martinez in Peru is the Pachamama, right? Is the word that is often used. So I don't know if you want to, I saw that you were also writing something, if you have any thought you want to come back to.
I love the idea of Petra asking for sand and dirt from different places, soil from different places. You know, there's a belief in a culture that every time you travel somewhere, you leave a part of your soul in the land, and that you take something with you. And that sometimes when you're called back to that space, you're called back to it because you've left a part of yourself there. And sometimes you have to go collect that back. And so I really, I love the way that both Okayung and Petra introduce themselves and ask for an introduction to the soil. That's a very traditional thing in the cultures that I work with all over Canada and the US, of having a very personal relationship. If you're going to take sweetgrass, for example, you would make an offering to the earth to say, I would use my spiritual name. I would say hello, and I would tell this plant my spiritual name. I would put an offering down and then ask to take something that she's grown for ceremony. And that I can imagine that the earth is talking to me back, and same with Petra's experience with it. And, you know, and I teach here at the Banff Center in Canada, and we have practices here where we send students out to go sit by a tree, to go sit on the land, to go find a rock. So rocks are animate for us, and to get a story back from them. So it all feels very connected to me.
Thank you. I'm also thinking of from the ritual and the physical connection also to the many invisible aspects. One, Aleesandro, you mentioned time, right? The changes are very different for us. And then I'm thinking also of the work that Roxanne not only attempted, but did when she was working with soil, of the sound of soil, right? There are different chemical and physical aspects of soil that are, I don't know, Roxanne, if you are around and you want to, with your background in physics and your interest in music and sound, what this image, it's a poster, so it's not zoomed in. Let me see if I can zoom in.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, so in my project, as I guess some of you know, I buried a microphone in a box in the ground, and then took recordings of like hours long of recordings of the ground, and then transcribed elements of those recordings and converted them into like gestures and songs that I then repeated the process of burying the box so it recorded me above the ground singing the songs that I created from the ground back to the ground kind of. So that was the process. And then also it was really nice, we managed to on the last day have it as a kind of communal song, which was really lovely. And because I'm a theatre maker, to have that process of collaboration with the soil and that collaboration between the human and the soil. And I think that's something that I've also been thinking about a lot in other work I'm doing, is like how we observe things and how our observations of things are affecting their experiences. And I guess in the process that I was doing, it was very much a human-based process. The observation was like, I was still it's going back to what everyone's been saying, it's coming through me as a human. Again, it's us as humans telling the soil how we are experiencing it as humans, actually, but trying to use some kind of language that somehow has been extracted. But yeah, it's also the sounds that I found in the soil were really the sounds of the creatures in the soil, like things moving. That was like one really nice, that was probably the most organic sound, and the most organic rhythms and ideas came out of that. But then there were also very strong sounds, like human sounds. Obviously there's the bells, the church bells in the valley. They were very present, and one field I buried the microphone in was right next to the church. So there was a lot of vibration. Actually, that sound was huge in the ground. But also the airplanes were really, really loud in the soil, much louder than anything else, actually, really, in the soil. So this connection between, because sound travels through air, right? So then you also having the connection between, like, I remember Aleesandro telling us that soil is like 25% air, 25% water, 25% organic matter, 50% organic matter, I think. So it was also like hearing those connections as well within the soil was really interesting, and that our presence in the air is making such an impact in the soil as well. Anyway, so that was, yeah. Thank you for listening.
May I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I have always been thinking, Ilaria, soil in terms of materiality. But what I heard from Petra, from maybe, allow me to say your name incorrectly, Ho Kyung, I mean, and Marilyn, of course, I mean, it's very much gives me an idea of a kind of religiosity. I don't know if this is a word, but there is a kind of aspect of faith that comes from belonging to the soil. I mean, our first speaker was saying the soil is not only where it's down, I mean, but it's where things begin, I mean. And to me, it's both of them. And I know this is a very, very personal concept, but I mean, in the past few days, I mean, looking back, I mean, thinking about this Pope who died and so on, and the idea to be buried in the soil, not a monument, not a catapult, nothing of that, you know. I mean, we are used, Michelangelo, I mean, made one of his most beautiful sculpture is a tomb. I mean, something that is very material and fascinating, exceptional. That's another. But I never thought of soil with this aspect that Petra came also from you, and very much Marilyn. I mean, this idea that the body touches the soil, it's almost a religious there. I mean, it's just because it's an open conversation, as I always say, also I mean, the way we react to what you say and the idea that comes from that is part of what we think will be the aim of this festival, to increase our way of looking around us with different eyes and also a different perception. I mean.
Thank you, Maristella. Yeah, we are Richard, we are at the last 10 minutes. I don't know if you want
Yeah,
to.
no, Marilyn has her hand raised, so go ahead, Marilyn.
Sorry.
I want to say that in the midst of sort of writing on this and having listened to people when we first started, I met a professor from Guelph who was constructing, they want to do a grandmother's lodge as a teaching unit at that university. And they've spent 3 years having the architect and university staff and some geologists going to the place where they're going to construct this and just listening to her. Who lives here, who comes and goes from here, what are the footprints here, what's a wintertime look, that very much that religious experience that you talk about. And you know, after, and the artist had such a huge impact on me when we were having our early discussions about the way we go in to look and greet and meet and understand something. And so I really felt that when we were talking about it, and it's why Creation Story came through me. And I actually tried to change my writing so many times and was just completely pushed back into talking about Creation Story, because that's some of the earliest teachings, and it's very long. Those are week-long teachings in the wintertime in traditional cultures. And so it's to ground you back to her. So I just love your comment. Thank you.
I think that's a really great position for what I want to kind of lean into a little bit right now. We got a couple of minutes. But there's an art piece that one of the fellows did, Sonia Arienta, who basically did this public puzzle piece, which was documenting the displacement of land that we basically go through and excavate when we build, right? In that sense. So we're actually moving a lot of these things, and we're displacing soil just for the fact that we need to inhabit an area. And in this case, we need to inhabit with a lot of density in that sense. So it's one of those things that I think in both in your piece, Marilyn, and also I think Aleesandro hit on this as well, was the fact that we do go through these excavation processes. We do a lot of damage to the actual soil, very substantial in how we actually react to it. And so I'm wondering, in both your pieces, how do you see us, you know, maybe dealing with that in a more beneficial way that isn't just basically going through and carving away at the earth and just getting rid of it and displacing it in that way?
I guess was a question to Marilyn and Aleesandro.
Yeah, I'll start. It's Aleesandro's. Aleesandro will have much more scientific, of course, answer than I will. I just want to say that one of the things that happens when we take death out of our lives and you go die in hospitals and funeral centers look after the body after and all of that is we forget about death. And if soil is as much about death as it is about life, and so what is happening with that expansion and urbanization for us with the death of not just soil, but our own souls and cultures, as was mentioned by Oh Ki-young, I'm hoping I'm saying your name properly, how do we reach in and touch that? And they're disappearing when you go into major centers. And so I love the question, Richard, about how we do that and how we see that. That image that you presented had a huge impact on me too, because death is part of life and we ignore that largely.
Yeah, Aleesandro, if you're
Okay,
here,
yep, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
So, yep, just I think I misheard the question. So the problem is how to deal with soil in a more efficient way, or like how to treat soil in a better way, or something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a long question. Maybe if we have
I
2 hours, I can have a lesson, but just so it's I think we can think about how to interact with soil, like reducing our physical disturbance, like avoid heavy machinery or deep digging or different way or for agriculture. Or another way to preserve soil is try to keep it with its natural coverage. So when we change soil coverage, we expose bare soil to weathering, so to raining, wind erosion, water erosion. So trying to preserve the soil coverage is a good way to preserve soil. Or, you know, maybe some, now can let me think about water management. So like, you know, if we don't, that's hard for me to say in English. I have to think about it. Give me a second. We like we should avoid over irrigation. Like if we over irrigate, we promote nutrient leaching and soil compaction. So if a soil is compacted and loses the nutrient, it's less fertile. So we promote soil degradation, or I think that's all I can think we can say in just a short amount of time. There are a lot of things we can do. The best thing is to think and to analyze before acting. So always think what you are about to do, and then do it in the best way you can. You know, it's always, it's not like we can't do anything, because sometimes you have to use soil, or you have to use the land as you want to do. But think about how you can not destroy or preserve some of the soil. It's always better. I think that's the main point.
Can I add, I love that, Aleesandro. And I want to say that what we've lost is this understanding of balance.
Yeah.
Because I had an elder out with a group of students that were land managers, and it was late August, and some fireflies showed up. I think Ilaria probably knows my story. I think I've shared this story already. And the fireflies showed up, and she was so upset because now the medicine she needed to pick for the fall, she couldn't pick because the fireflies were there, and she has a contract with the fireflies not to pick after they show up, because her job is to leave, only take what you need. The traditional law, the natural laws, take what you need. And so when we're making our footprints, whatever context you go through, we've lost that sense of balance, I think. So for your question, Richard, is like, we have responsibilities. We don't have rights to this, even though we have expansion. We have responsibilities to all the other beings. And so what's that look like? And when you take the science that Aleesandro puts forward with your traditional teachings about your responsibility and the context in which you come to the earth, it starts to paint a different picture. And it's one of balance, and we're clearly out of balance. That's what climate change is all about, right?
Yeah, precisely. I think that was well put on both parts. And thank you. I think that's a great way to end it, actually thinking about what our footprint is and what it is that we're doing, and that responsibility that we have overall. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for this conversation on soil. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Aleesandro. And thank you to our fellows that participated today. We really appreciate it. And now I'll just give you the closing comments back to Ilaria, and I'm hoping everybody's able to join us still next weekend as well. So back to you, Ilaria.
Yes, thank you, Richard, Marilyn, Aleesandro, and also the voices of Petra and Ho-Kyung that represented the fellows and everyone else on the call. Was very inspiring and very rewarding, I have to say, to see all of you here today, and you know, the enthusiasm and really the richness of the conversations that we can, starting from the book, carry on, and their importance. So we thank you for being here today, and yes, please come back on May 3rd to continue and expand some of the topics, and bring in more authors from the different disciplines. As you can see, we are trying also having voices from different point of views, because it's really with an open dialogue that we can make a shift, or we hope to make a shift. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. Also, of course, the NAHR team, Richard, Roxanne, Maristella, Asle, and everyone else that I'm maybe, and of course also Rachel, that is new to our group, but she was the host of the first hour, and for her wonderful committed hour with us. Thank you, everyone, and see you next Saturday for more.